there are some things that require complexity. But to do lunges and to like chew broccoli slowly, it's not that complex.
Hey everyone, I'm Morgan, co-founder of Primal Kitchen and host of the Primal Kitchen podcast. Today we're speaking with Opex Fitness founder, James Fitzgerald. James and his business are on a mission to be the best education provider for fitness coaches seeking career success, longevity, and fulfillment. They meet their mission by increasing the value of each coach through education, fitness business mentorship, and providing tools coaches need to professionalize their passion. James even put his coaching advice into his own hands and became the fittest man on earth by winning the inaugural CrossFit Games in 2007. Before we talk CrossFit, fitness, and coaching, a brief reminder that any and all opinions and views shared by hosts and guests on this podcast are the speaker's own and do not represent the view of Primal Kitchen or its affiliates or parent company. Hi, James. How are you?
Hi. It's a pleasure to meet you, Morgan.
Yeah, you as well. We're super excited to have you. I cannot wait to hear your story. This is crazy. So I'm talking to one of the fittest men on earth. This is a big title.
Yeah, previously it was I was the fittest amongst 100 in 2007, and somehow that escalated into the world. But I'll take it.
You got to take those things when they come. So give me the lowdown. How did you get into fitness and CrossFit and all the things?
Yeah, I was a young kid who was active, and I lived in a northern community in Canada, and the way I saw it, now that I'm looking back, you basically had two options. You can go down the less physically expressive, inspiring path, or you could go down the physical expression path, which would be sport and being active all the time. And I basically did that. And so that transformed into wanting to learn more about it as I aged, and did the usual, the conformist, process of aging, and then you got to go to post-secondary education, and then you got to have a house and dog and pet. And all along the way, I've been a part of fitness with that. So it came from being a young kid who was active, and it just turned into something that I wanted to tell others about, really.
Fabulous. And what sport were you doing? All the sports growing up?
Yeah, all of them. I specialized more so with soccer and hockey towards the latter part of my high school career, but I always loved doing it, which is why, I loved fitness, I think, in the end, because I just like trying to be good at a whole bunch of things.
Yeah, for sure. And so do you think like growing up, this was instrumental in kind of keeping you out of trouble? Or you said you can go like one of two routes. I'm the mom of two boys with a third boy on the way. So I need like all the tips on how you feel like that influenced your early childhood.
Yeah, for sure. I'd hesitate to say that my path would be something that could be role modeled. I think that, this was like the late 70s and the early 80s in a town of 3,000 in northern Canada. So that kind of lays out exactly what the upbringing was. This town was kind of brought together by iron ore and natural resources from the ground. So and just give you an idea, you would freeze to death if you went outside, during 6-7 months of the year. So that to answer your question lengthily, I think that has to be preempted, that you really did only have two options. You went to the hockey rink or the rec center, or you got into trouble. So I think it was just those two things. And I think, yes, the staying active and trying to continually challenge myself amongst my peers, I think kept me on the straight and narrow.
Yeah. And so then how did this evolve? Did you go to school in Canada for college? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I went to Memorial University of Newfoundland. It's a university in St. John's, Newfoundland, which is the capital of the province of Newfoundland and Labrador. And I did some more detailed, I guess, at the time, whatever you could do to analyze whatever this thing is that's called physical expression, science or the physical sciences. And I finished there and then moved to Calgary and started my vocation, I guess you could say, after that.
Okay. So what vocation did you start? Like, what did you get into first?
Yeah, well, this is the rub for today, that maybe we can get into talking about the fitness, landscape. There's no real language on what I was. I guess at the time I was called a personal trainer.
Okay.
I was certified as a strength and conditioning consultant. But deep in my heart, but I couldn't put language to it. At the time, I was a vitality consultant. So a consultant for someone who wanted to somehow, participate in nourishing themselves so they could navigate this planet for as best as possible. Right. But I didn't have any language for that when I was, in my early ages, but it was called, that at the time.
Yeah.
So since the mid 90s, that's been my title, whatever that is, life and lifestyle and fitness consultant, etc.
Yeah. And so when you say that, like vitality, like it encompasses so much more than just like the title of personal trainer. So like what things went into that? What things go into that? Like if I were to hire you, what goes into that?
Yeah. To get you, to kind of figure out, first of all, where you sit on, your perception of what vitality means. I want to figure out, not just from you, but you asked for you. I want to figure out from you, how do you see the world with regards to vitality and what it can offer you? And then, I would bucket it from my training and education, which we do in CCP, into behavior and exercise and nutrition as the three pillars of prescription that I'm going to kind of, you and I are going to go back and forth on, right? Like, what are your behaviors and your actions day to day? What are you participating in the movement, physical expression, exercise? And then how are you nourishing yourself with the information that you put into your mouth, right? And I'm going to try to, back to answer your question, I'm going to try to get you on board of you trying to figure out for yourself what are the best things that you need to participate in today so that it gets you started on the pathway towards the best you can possibly be in behavior, exercise, and nutrition. So that culminates in a definition, which if you stretch it out for 80 years, results in what I define as vitality. It's someone's continual search for their best expression of themselves, physically, cognitively, emotionally. And I think you can do that if people are given what I would call the freedom to like think about those things and the freedom to have conversations with people. And that's what we try to get coaches to do.
So cool. So you started working with people individually, and then when did Opex Fitness come into the game?
Yeah, well, Opex was kind of there all the time, except without naming,
Okay.
So I started the naming of the business in 99. And that's why we say we've been in fitness since 99. But I was doing whatever that was as James Fitzgerald prior to that. It's just that's when I started the business. It was called OPT. We moved to Arizona in 2011. And OPT was used as a personal training concept down here. It wasn't trademarked, but we didn't want to do the back and forth of right of first usage and all that. So we had to change our name. So it's been OPT, Opex, quote unquote, for that period of time. Yeah, cool. Since 99.
And the focus shifted. Are you like more to helping coaches, or are you still more helping individuals?
Yeah, good question. I think it's I'm not sure really if it's going to be the future evolution of a coach, into mastery and et cetera, where that goes. But I've been very grateful that was my path. I think though, worlds colliding or different, things colliding in culture, the rise of information technology, the .com boom, at the end of the 90s, coaches were seen as this like real, big emblem in society as someone who's going to be a consultant that's going to help you with all the things that you want to do towards vitality, et cetera. And through that coaching, yes, I was coaching a lot of people in person for that period of time, late 90s till 2008, 2009, 2010. And then at the same time, I started to see that a lot of people were asking about why, essentially one question, but there was a lot of questions like, why did I enjoy my job so much? Because it was kind of at the point in time where, a lot of my clients would look at my profession and where I stood in the community and say, gosh, there's some kind of secret ingredient as to what you're doing and why you're enjoying what you're doing. And of course, with those questions just starts to, culminate in me putting together an education program to like answer those questions. Like, well, what would I do if I was to help another coach try to get into the same position and enjoy the things that I do inside of fitness? And that's where I started the CCP, which would be like the second half of that career that I just gave you,
Cool.
of being, in person all the time, and then educating coaches to kind of, have a larger impact, I guess, or make the attempt to have a larger impact.
Yeah. So God, so many things. I want to get into like the modalities on the program. I want to talk CrossFit, but first I'm curious on this topic of just enjoying your job. Like, tell me more about that. Like, have you just always loved what you do? Have you known you always wanted to go this path? Like,
yeah.
Because we've got this great resignation upon us, and everybody's searching.
Yeah, for sure. I do think a lot about vocation. And I think it's just because of what I do today, which is coach a lot of coaches, and the entrepreneurism and marketing and, all the things are inside of that for economy. So I think about a lot. I don't know if I can answer your question though, succinctly by saying that I thought about it. I really didn't. I don't know if my brain was developed enough, honestly, at the time to kind of think about that. Do you know what I mean by that? Like, it's, I'm just doing what
you kind of just fell into it. It wasn't like some predetermined, this is going to be my path. I know what I want to do for life.
Gosh.
You kind of followed the signs.
Yeah, gosh. I think the only paper trail we could probably connect is physical expression, right? Like, as a young kid, I loved, doing the suicide sprints on the ice rink at the end of practice. Like, I loved taking on other people. So there's something in that, right, that I tried to like maybe develop myself more out of, or express myself to a level that I could learn about myself, right? And then, I think that kind of maybe stepwise led to that, but I can't be sure. And I forget what the first part of your question was, but yes, I have always enjoyed it. I have always enjoyed it. There's been lots of, but the challenges, there's not lots of challenges, but the challenges have always been, met with like, "Ooh, this is a good challenge," as opposed to like, "Oh my God, that's such a challenge."
Yeah.
So I think I've always enjoyed it. And I wouldn't want to, make any generalized statements to say that you just got to believe and, just put your head down and hustle and things will work out. I don't know about that. I think that, I think I've always enjoyed it though.
Yeah. Okay. So if you don't, I think about this question a lot, right? Because I kind of I had an underlying thread, maybe similarly to like nutrition, and got into that. And then I fell into meeting Mark, and then into my, like, I love my job too, right? I run this food company that I'm super passionate about, and I get to do marketing and innovation and sales and all these things. It's amazing. But I often think about this, like you said, just do the hard work and everything works out in the end. Like, what, if it isn't that, like, what is it then that brings you to a place where you have success and meaning and purpose in your life and you like your job? Like, what do you think it was then for you?
Jeez, that's a deep question.
Yeah.
My parents, my mom's mitochondria. I don't know.
I like it. Shout out to mitochondria.
Yeah, that's right. Well, shout out to my mama.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think that was, I think that was it. It was my upbringing, really. That's what kind of set the tone for, what laid out in front of me. And I think I've kind of, if it makes sense to say it this way, I think after my mid-20s, I kind of became aware and then took the reins from what, does that make sense?
Yeah. But what in particular about the upbringing? Like, I'm very curious.
Oh yeah. Geez, let's see here. Stability, I say that only now as a father of two young girls, 15 and 12. So stability, rhythm, let's call it security. How I describe what nourishment means, nourishing, not just, emotional nourishment, but a place for at least conversation on nourishment.
Yeah.
Product placement here, Kraft peanut butter.
Oh,
There's lots of Kraft peanut butter.
God, I like it.
I'm not sidewinding here, but I just want to make mention that you you and I are connected in deeper ways than you know. That my upbringing was based on Kraft peanut butter, and now my existence is all about primal mayo. So we are connected with these long threads for a long period of time. But I think it was those things. I think my not just my parents, but the community too. They had, I guess you would call it like a traditional older version of the community spirit, which you knew everyone, and you were able to meet challenges head on, face to face with problems were dissolved in church, and problems were dissolved in the community hall, face to face with people.
Mm-hmm.
This was on no base supported technology. So I'm just trying to bulk in what you asked, right? It's like, well, what are those things in the upbringing? I think it was some of those things that kind of set the tone. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and allowed you to have the confidence, because there's a lot of people, men and women, who enjoy doing suicide sprints or whatever else, right? In high school, but then they go on to get office desk jobs they hate, right? And then they maybe start training with you in their 30s, and they quit their jobs and like have a career change and whatnot. So I think it takes a lot to like break the mold right out of school. I mean, you really have to know yourself.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I see where you're going there. I think it's probably the timing too. Like, I mean, that was the early 90s, right? So I think in the early 90s, if I think back to it, for what it was like in Canada, I mean, the industry, quote unquote, the health and fitness industry, it was ripe for the picking, right? There was so much work to go around for everyone. So that's also something to take into consideration there, that you could choose a lot. And to your previous point of the person who just gets the desk job, maybe in their case or in other cases, there's just not a lot of options. So they kind of got to, get into a path. And then there's the whole other area, which I'm not sure if you're, offline because it's lengthy to discuss, is the whole educational complex, right? And epistemology and knowledge, and like how that fits in, quote unquote, to society, and simplicity versus complexity in academia. Like that's an area that I'm really interested in, because I'm an educator, right? I'm a public educator, and I'm trying to educate other humans on these really simple things, right? But a lot of time, what gets in the way of those simple things is people wanting to make it complex, because they can make money off that.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, that's big in the health and fitness world. It's big in the universe right now. I mean,
well, yeah, for sure.
Living that, aren't we?
Yeah, well, we want to be careful there too. Is there are some things that require complexity. Like brain surgery. Building a bridge. Creating electricity for a home. I could go a list of things that do require tenure and 6 to 12 years of like nonstop practice, right? But to do lunges and to like chew broccoli slowly, it's not that complex.
Yeah,
right? It's not that complex.
Yeah. How have we gotten here? I feel like, geez, I mean, we really have complicated the hell out of fitness and nutrition.
Yeah.
Both.
Well, I think in the 90s, I was part of that movement that made it something, right? I was part of the movement that created a commercial interest in this knowledge around physical autonomy and physical freedom and being able to nourish oneself. I think if you go back, long enough too, I'll just take this short model in time, but I think in the, which some people would argue, like from the 60s into the 70s, it was, now that I'm in America, it's probably some of the best times to be alive in America. There's so many positive things and change happening in culture, et cetera. And at those times inside of education, there was, even I wouldn't say significant, but there was a considerable amount of education inside schooling for nourishment, right? So physical education wasn't, let's just see how many free throws you can hit, and that's how we score you. It was about movement, right? Like we would have movement physical standards, and we would have movement play and movement practice, right? And no one was questioning like, well, geez, how are we going to test these kids? It's like, that's not what movement is about, right? It's to allow them to. And then secondary, what we used to call in Canada home economics. I don't even know why it was called that, but home ec classes. I did that for 6 years, from grade 6 to 12, right? Learned how to bake foods, learned how to build a shirt, learned woodworking. But I mean, just think about that. Like, these were things that were embedded that allowed you to do what? That allowed you at 18 to like step out of school and live, right?
Yeah, I know.
So I think the 90s, I was a part of that group inside of health and fitness that went like this. We're like, ooh, we can make this really complex with all these things that we seemingly think are really important, and make people want it, you know?
Yeah.
And then of course we take away movement for young kids, we take away nourishment for kids in the schooling, and now you have billions of people who are like, well, geez, what should I do for fitness? You know,
Yeah.
and here am I'm like, oh, I can tell you because
Yeah.
I'm so smart because I did all this academia, you know, based upon it. So it's that. Secondly, too, is, you know, when you start tiptoeing into like making something seemingly really important, I'll give you the example, you know, especially in exercise, and it's not the only one, but you know, the VO2 max, right? So the VO2 max and the testing of it moved outside of the lab and it moved into culture, right? And people were like, well, this is really cool. And as soon as people got word that it was kind of cool, more or less, then of course medicine can look at it. If medicine looks at it, then they're like, oh, wow, we could basically market this as being a panacea for like taking care of heart disease. And like, this is what people need to focus on. So what you see started to happen there was that this concept of VO2 max, which I said, you know, there's like 30 different things of this inside of exercise, but we moved that out into culture and fitness culture. And now what we had was these pillars of, you need to do VO2 max because it's going to keep you from having heart disease. And you're going to do VO2 max training because you can be an athlete and be just like the world's best endurance athlete. And so now these are the two big marketing ploys that we use to throw on top of people for fitness. And the fitness consumers, they're like, oh, I guess I'm doing this because I want to perform or I want to not get fat. And look back, it's like, that's not even the intentions to do it.
Yeah.
So you can just see how that just like, and now there's institutions and there's VO2 max academics, right? 20 years of research on that stuff, which for some small part, I'm sorry to be lengthy on that, but for some small part, you know, it is good for performance for the endurance athlete, you know, that wants to win something. But how that carries over to vitality, you know, so I'm hoping I can give some insight into how we've made some things or one thing ridiculously complex.
Yeah.
Ridiculously complex.
I think there's a third group of people that is like, okay, I want to get in shape, but like, oh, I have to do this VO2 maxing. I don't understand this. And then they're just like, fuck it. I'm just going to eat my McDonald's and like go for a walk maybe, but I don't even want in on this game because this is way too complicated for me. It's a turn.
That's the classification of people that I was saying have unconsciously not been aware that there are options of freedom.
Yeah.
Right. You know what I mean? Like, so for me to tell coaches this, it's super simple for me to sit behind a screen and just like tell coaches this, right? Because I can see some things from history and experiences. But for coaches to get that across, Morgan, to humans out there, man,
yeah.
I almost pause and like get really pessimistic on the outlook for it, because it's a really tough journey because the systems and the institutions are not set up to honor this process of, you know, having good conversation on, as I said to you, right? What is your perception of what vitality is?
Yeah.
You know, and because immediately people are like, oh, you're supposed to do this because this will not kill you, right? It's like, oh gosh, you know, how do we rewind that one back?
Yeah.
It's like, actually, no, we're just going to exercise because we can and because it's for you. How about that? And people can't get that. They can't understand it.
Yeah. So you've been talking a lot about simplicity. Like, how do you break it down then? Nutrition wise, fitness wise, and I guess the behavior stuff you talked about. Like, give it to me then, simply.
Well, you start with those three buckets of behavior, exercise, and nutrition. And you create simple language. And then the simple language, you know, for each of those pillars allows people to, you know, the clients to ask harder questions, or more, let's call it inquisitive, you know, things about it. And then I like to say, then you're on your way. Because if you have simple language that people either retort at, disagree with, or like just can't get it, at least they're going to ask a secondary question,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, oh, tell me more, or I disagree. What about this? You then you're on your way, because now you're into this like back and forth and trying to come up with what you believe to be, the right path.
Yeah.
So, simple things for exercise is we'd say patterns of movement one day. And I'm going to, use this as a little experimentation to see what you think about that, to see if it's simple enough. But we say patterns one day and pacing another day. And what that means is that you're going to do resistance one day and you're going to do aerobic work another day. And then I just pause. And I tell people, based upon this premise that we want to do exercise and move every day forever, you're going to press replay on that and you're going to do it for the rest of your life. And I'll just pause there and stop and say, so what's your thoughts on that? And then with their questions back, at least it gives me an idea as to where they sit on their journey towards like making it as simple as possible. So if someone is, just out of college with a kinesiology degree and finished a Division I sport, you can imagine what they're going to ask in the next question, right? If I just say something as, oh, you just do resistance one day and easy aerobic work the next and press repeat, and get out, that young student is going to be like, well, what about, blood pressure cuff optimization of, mitochondrial biogenesis at the and so at least, and so now I can see based upon that secondary question where they sit on their perception and their awareness of how far they are away from making things simple. So that was for the exercise, patterns and pacing. For nutrition, we use this idea of local natural foods sourced from the earth and start with that as a premise, and then go from there. And then for behaviors, we talk about, well, it's based upon what your perceptions are, because your perceptions are going to lead into your behaviors, which then lead into your actions. So we start with perception, asking a question like as a start under that behavior pillar, where do you sit on this awareness of things, of your life, of fitness, of, how you deal with adversity, how you deal with change, how you deal with learning, etc. So perception envelops all that. So those are the three simple pieces. Behavior, we would talk about perception. Exercise, we talk about pacing and patterns. And then nutrition, we talk about local, earth sourced fuel.
Very cool. I love it.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally makes sense. And it's definitely is simplified, and I could see how it opens up a nice conversation. So for you personally, and then I want to get into I want to know where CrossFit comes into the picture here. But for you personally,
and we don't need to talk about that.
Oh, come on. What is the
other stuff's more important?
What does the current routine look like? Like, what are you doing? Everyone wants to know what like a, fittest man on earth, what his routine looks like. God, it's been like 13 years or something crazy since, wasn't it 2007 when we won the fittest man on earth? Yeah, so it's been a while.
Yeah, 14 years.
14 years, yeah.
So it's definitely different today than what I did then. I'll tell you that.
I want to hear both. I want to hear both, by the way.
Okay.
Both.
Yeah, I can make it really simple because I speak about that a lot, of the demarcation between sport versus vitality. And they're by no means similar. And they both have different outcomes and they have different intentions. So to make it simple, when I was competing, I wanted to kill things, right? I wanted to kill the time. I wanted to kill the clock. I wanted to kill the barbell. I wanted to beat other people. Like, I wanted to trip people up in order to win. I didn't actually want to, but I really did want to. Mm-hmm. I also wouldn't feel bad if people got hurt in competition. And I'm trying to give you just an idea that a lot of people don't get some insight into the difference between sport versus vitality. So I wanted to basically, claw you, right? I wanted to hurt you and I wanted to beat you. And that's what was inside sport. So what I did for training at that point in time had nothing to do with keeping me vital for the rest of my life. It had to do with beating other people. Yeah. Beating the clock, getting faster, lifting more, etc. So I would do whatever it takes basically to make that happen. So that would include training 3 times a day, doing extra supplementary activity, et cetera, burning all your resources because it requires a whole bunch of stuff in order to compete. Mm-hmm. Right. So for today, I want to move every day for the rest of my life. I'm 47. I'm going to be 48 in a couple of weeks. And, without anyone else having a good analysis or assessment of that, I think mechanically, I probably got another 25 to 30 years in me that, before I'm either relying on robot parts, or, I'm really going to have to take a real good look as to how mechanically head to toe I'm going to be able to survive and stay functional. So I got really, 25 to 30 years left where I want to enjoy movement with those around me. And I want to move every day because I love it. It's an opportunity for me to meditate on things and to continually to connect to that, young kid around physical expression and learning about myself and et cetera. It also, keeps me from being restless. It also keeps me from, getting into trouble. And I want to do that. And for my kids and my wife, and also for my kids' kids in the future, I want to be able to, kneel down, have that young kid run at me and be able to pick them up and throw them overhead. And so that's the differing demarcating lines of thought when you ask the question, well, what do I do?
Yeah.
Well, I do the basic things, resistance one day, aerobic work the next day, and I just press repeat on that so I can do things for the rest of my life.
So are you every other day you're doing something every day?
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes multiple things a day.
Okay. You don't like
No,
where you're like, I'm supposed to do resistance today. I don't feel like lifting.
No. Again, the whole concept, again, it's lengthy, but the whole concept of our language, just like with you and I talking now, you and I both have to learn that, where did we come up with this language that says day off, right? Where does that come from? That comes from a performance model, right? Because all you're looking to do is to, pump yourself with enough protein so that you can put more muscle back on, and you got to give it enough rest so that you can come back and lift again, to break muscle protein down, to build. You see, now you're down this like 15-year road on hypertrophy, and you just like, oh, day off. It's like, what do you mean by that? Right. Yeah. And that's just an example of the language that is so hard to shake, right, in regards to moving every day. So when someone says, well, should we move every day? My quick answer is, you're damn right you should move every day, because you can, and because it's for you, right? And you're not doing it for any other reasons. You're not doing it to lose fat. You're not doing it to build muscle. You're doing it because we humans are capable of doing it. I think the big struggle with that, to continue on with that, not even with you asking about it, the big struggle with it is that, Morgan, if you and others haven't realized, we don't have a functional need to move, right? We actually don't need to. Like the daily practices that we embark on. So for you, and I'm not going to say this is an 8-hour day for you, but for you to market or for you to do meetings, right? You actually don't need to do physical training to actually perform those things.
Yeah, no, that's
so just take that example, and then think about all the jobs all over the world, right? There's probably 0.03% of all vocations that actually require some physical training to allow people to do their jobs, right? So you can just see the struggle there. Is that, well, what's the other choice? Well, you choose Peloton, right? You choose a cortisol inducing high intensity class 4 times a week, right? That's what you choose. And then you just say, oh, I do it because, I don't know, that's what you should do, right? Like, no, that can't be the reason why you do it. Yeah. So this is our struggle today, is to figure out, how do we put like physical expression in place for the right intentions, Yeah.
Well, that makes sense. I loved waitressing because I was on my feet for so long, and you're just running, you're rushing around and you're moving your body. I think that was something I struggled with in my 20s. I'm like, oh God, like sitting behind a computer, even with COVID, like before COVID, I would take calls and I would go walk all the time. I would just walk and be on the phone. And then everyone started video conferencing. And I was like, this is the end of me. Like I complain about it to my team all the time, because you're stuck glued to the computer. It's brutal. Yeah.
There's something about that. My wife did that as well for a number of years. She says the exact same thing.
Oh, it's great.
We always philosophically debate if it was just because she needed to stay on the move, because she's that type of person, right? For productivity and being active, et cetera. Or was it just something that, she enjoyed. And then secondly, yeah, for the, that's another thing we gotta, contend ourselves with is the impending metaverse, as not only being, a platform, and I use metaverse with the small m, not necessarily the company, but it is going to be an example of where a lot of people are moving. And this is the big, grip is, we're just continually setting up human adaptation to move less, yet we have unbelievably more access to pleasurable, high calorie foods.
Yeah.
So it's, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know how that's going to
proposition.
And I can tell you the answer to it is not to make people move more intensely or to make them move unconsciously. That's not going to be the answer. Everyone thinks that's the answer. And a lot of other people think that everyone thinks it's the 1 minute, high intensity research that's going to get, everyone out of this, like, let's call it a dark phase of a lack of movement. I don't think that's going to be the case. If you look around and say, well, what's the promotion of any of the companies and what are they actually promoting for activity today? It's body objectification on the front end. It's a tone of like, if you don't hustle and work hard and go all out, then you're not worth anything. And all your answers and all your woes are answered inside of intensity. Right. Even the white collar medical professional who's never worked out a day in their life are making recommendations to clients as they walk out the door. Oh, you should look into this high intensity interval training. Mm-hmm. Right. So they don't even have a clue what they're talking about, but it's seeped into the language, into the culture. Mm-hmm. Right. So that's what I mean. That is not the answer to what my previous point was on the issues. Yeah, the answer is I think is people taking responsibility for the knowledge of their own physical freedom. That's what I think is the answer to that. And then we can just let the cards play out where they may. But don't tell me that people don't know or they can't get the information around physical freedom and what those pillars that I talked about of, adaptive thoughts and patterns and pacing and nourishing yourself locally. Those things are right in front of people. It's just getting it to them.
Yeah, for sure. And everyone's burnt out and it is about priorities and really like, yeah.
Well, we thought that on that point on priorities, we thought that this COVID thing would really make people think about what really matters, like on a really, really deep level, what really matters. But it didn't in the fitness universe. Instead, in the fitness universe, we just discovered that we are at the behest of technology, and they are really ramping things up to kill fitness coaches and to kill the human fitness coach and to make, all that knowledge and information on individualization down to a Peloton screen or an Apple Fitness screen TV. Where you just do 1 minute of some kind of high intensity thing, and on the other end is a robot, or one person with a VR, and everyone thinks they're getting healthy. That's where I saw things going.
Interesting. Yeah. I know that. Yeah. Well, these tech stocks are having a hell of a time this week, so maybe they're going to wake up and realize, in the end of the day, it still is human to human relationships, folks. Like, there's just not much we can do to replace that. But it's hard, I'm someone who definitely prioritizes my health, right? Like I work in this industry. I've tried everything. I have therapists. I'm all about anything that will help me live a more vital life, as you would say. I've never thought about it that way, but I definitely have been on a 15-year quest for what is right for me, what is the right diet, what is the right workout, what is the right, lifestyle, all of those things. And I don't even have a fitness coach, it's hard to find how do you find a good match for you?
Yeah, but it's not, see, that's the thing, is that I don't think you haven't found a coach because they're not out there. I think you just haven't owned the fact that you are autonomous, right? So it looks like with your search on the outside looking in, people could look at that and be like, oh, she's still searching, so she must be lost. It's actually, no, you're actually striving for your potential. right? So how does one strive for the potential? They have to continually learn about things, right? So finding a new therapist every couple of years, or adapting to a new fitness program, or trying something out, like that's not a lost soul. That's someone who's directed towards trying to find their highest potential. So you can see it's all about the language that we use based on that. But that's one thing I wanted to point out, is that there's a huge number of people who we need, people like you, using the terms like, I'm autonomous, I'm doing this on my own, and I'm fully confident that I'm going to be okay doing it. It's just that a lot of us don't want to tell people that. We don't want to say it. And that's my big hard thing, is like trying to get people to realize, no, you can do this. You can do this. It's fairly simple. And you just got to have the confidence to know how to adapt, which is beautifully just laid out in your story there. You do this thing and then you adapt, and you do this thing and you adapt, but you're still going upward, right? You're going like this, right? It's a cycle, but it's an upward cycle. Yeah, but
that's the path. That's the journey.
That is the path. That's the path, and that's how it's done. Anyways,
I quit a lot of jobs in my 20s, let me tell you. So I hear you. And it wasn't until I met Mark that I really, a lot of tears, a lot of searching, I guess. Yeah.
But you were working towards your potential the whole time.
Yeah. And do you guys with Opex, is there can you connect, if someone's listening and they're thinking like, man, I really would love to work with someone who is trained in this modality or has this philosophy, can they find a match through Opex, or where would you direct them?
Yeah, I would say, it could be through Opex. I'd be really nice if, you were in an area where we had an Opex gym, or there was an Opex coach who could have a good conversation with you, because that's basically what we do up front. But I would ask that person who's listening in, if you've never heard of Opex in the beginning, or you don't know where to start, I would say do your research, right? You gotta go out there, and that coach who's on the other end that you ask questions about, that has to be good for you and suitable for your lifestyle. Up front, they should have at least 60 to 90 minutes unpaid, I would say, to start, where they just want to have a conversation with you. That should be the first relationship building aspect. And so the listeners, go find someone who, yes, has the skills in behavior, exercise, and nutrition to help you for the vitality concept. But I think they're going to be able to say, hey, what's most important for us is to sit down face to face and have a conversation. So then you as a client can then say, well, these are my things and how I see the world in regards to what fitness is. And then the coach gets their opportunity, right, for a couple of minutes at least, to talk back and say, well, this is what I think what might possibly be best for you. And then the client says, well, these are the things that I'm coming on board with in this relationship. And then the coach says, well, these are the things that I would have as expectations, as well as where to take this, how I can help you, and how we may have to use other areas as resources to help. Do you see that? That all culminates in a 60 to 90 minute, at least a conversation where at the end, the client can go, you know what, it's probably not the best for me. Mm-hmm. But the only other option today, Morgan, is available is for them to just knock on the door, and then all of a sudden they're in this whirlwind, sensational lights and camera and fast shit. And they get spit out on the other end. They're breathing really hard and they're sweating, right? And they don't even know where they are. And the coach is like, so sign up now? Yeah. And the client's like, oh yeah, I guess if I'm going to be getting that all the time, I guess we should do this. So that's not, of course, I'm just painting a picture, but that's essentially what it is. So you can see how people get lost in that fray, right? Is they don't get to speak to a coach who's just like, geez, well, what's your fitness experience?
Right.
How many coaches have you had in the past? Right. And then you can even, you can get into some humorous stuff with people, right? What's your thoughts on coconut oil?
Right. Yeah.
I just giggle at that because, clients come back and forth every 6 weeks with, it being the answer, or it's going to kill you. So
yeah. MCT too. That one's quite controversial.
Yes. But I mean, that's you want to discuss those things, take some time to go back and forth with people. So that's what I would tell your listeners is if you can't go to Opex, opexfit.com, or if you can't go to an Opex gym in your area, just go and do your research. And that's a bit of a burden on you. I know it, but you got to do the hard work. If you want to find a path for vitality, there are professionals out there who are willing to help you, but they shouldn't have a front end mania fitness assessment that's going to, get you in the door.
Yeah, no, I like that. And I think establishing expectations up front is key, right? Otherwise you don't even know.
For sure.
Yeah. Okay. So what is LearnRX? This is like a new venture, something you recently started. Tell us about that.
Yeah, we are just basically making a tiptoeing attempt as to how to jump over coaches and reach the public. And this is our way of offering that initial, starting point to the public on what we would call fitness education. So in layman's terms, for what people would recognize that's currently out there today, it's like masterclass, where you have, I can't say, I would love to say I'm at the level of Neil deGrasse Tyson, which is one of my favorite master classes that I've taken, was his. But Neil deGrasse Tyson, speaking to someone, for 40 minutes, anyone like a 12-year-old, right, on the concepts of space. That's me, so I have a 30-minute class that the public can get access to, where I talk about the basics of patterns and pacing. And that comes in the format of what's called LearnRX. So that's what our attempt is to do, is to finally go out into the public. And this is our first venture into that, to try to get our information out there on basic stuff.
Cool. Now, who is Neil deGrasse Tyson? What is this?
Oh, sorry. I don't even know what his title is, but he's
very curious.
Oh yeah, well, there you go. I should get some kickbacks from Masterclass on that, but he's a scientist and a cosmologist, and he is deeply invested in answering all the questions of the universe. On that, it sounds pretty, huge, but that's basically what he's up to doing. So do your investigations and start with the masterclass, which is a low cost. You can do it one time as well. And then you can see what I was using as an example. Like, for example, I've done Serena Williams masterclass, right? And my girls have watched her masterclass on tennis participation. What other ones have I done? Dead Mouse. I don't know if you know who Dead Mouse is. Okay, well, I've done that as well. I've recognized that I'll never be able to do what he does, which is kind of cool, but at least I got to see some of the inner workings, So that's what LearnRX is, Morgan, is to basically an attempt for us to get out into the public and talk about some of these things that we think they should hear.
I love it. Okay, so we have a few minutes left. I just have some quick, kind of random questions for you. So what are you most excited about these days in health and wellness that we haven't talked about yet?
Most excited about, there's not a lot that I'm excited about in health and wellness these days. Just being honest.
I love it. Nothing. No.
Not much, no.
Oh, not even LearnRX or some of your own stuff? I mean, it seems like you guys are.
Oh, yeah, sure. There you go.
CrossFit, are you excited about? We still didn't talk about CrossFit. So really quick.
No, I'm not excited about CrossFit.
Okay. Yeah, I know, man. They've had kind of a rough go of it. But give me the load on how you even found CrossFit, because it was pretty new when you got into it.
Yeah. Well, it was in existence for a number of years prior to it, but
only
I had a client. Yeah. I had a client who was a fighter who went to this fight camp, and a number of the fighters were doing this thing called CrossFit. He came back. This was 2004, I think. And he said, "Hey, Fitz, you got to check this out." Because he knew I was in trying to figure out all the newest fitness things and trends and et cetera. And this thing coming out of California. And so I looked online, checked it out, started doing the workouts. And hey, over time, I just became really disciplined in doing them all the time. And it should just make sense that I became really good at them, with my background in education and training and coaching and experience as a kid, just worked really well for me.
Cool. And then how did you go on to win?
Well, I was, pre-games, there was a time, people can't believe this, but there was a time there's no such thing as CrossFit Games. And so what people would do every day, believe it or not, we would just work out every day, which is also crazy to understand. Because everyone thinks everyone's life revolves around the CrossFit Games today, who are inside that, where we used to just get up every day and the workout be posted and we just compete. And then you would put your scores online. Right. So I did that for numerous years. And so when they said, oh, now we're going to have an in-person competition, it should make sense that I should be one of the top people if I was always, in the top scoring online for those years, right? So they had an in-person competition finally, which is 2007. They called it I don't even know if they called it the CrossFit Games at the time, but competition, and I won that. And but it does make sense. I was in there for a number of years. I was, my early 30s. I think I was 32 or 33 at the peak of my physical career. This was something new. The talent pool wasn't super high, which is something also that's important to remember.
I love it.
So
very cool. And are you still involved in CrossFit at all these days, or no more CrossFit for you?
No. I'm more involved by trying to shed the connection. That's what I'm more involved in doing, if that is any connection, if that is anything. And that's my own journey. That's my own stuff to kind of work on. That was a good part of my life, where I learned a lot of things. I learned a lot of things that I would say I wouldn't do inside of fitness and fitness building and business building. And, it gave me great perception as to how the public and individuals are tied into what fitness is. It gave me, just great analysis of that. But I'm trying to do my thing, and hopefully I can, make some impact on coaches' minds for what these truths and principles are.
Very cool. Okay, I'm lightening it up. What's your go-to breakfast?
Applegate sausages, a gluten-free cinnamon raisin toast, and banana. I'm just looking over my shoulder because I think that's what I had this morning, but that's probably generally the general go-to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm big on the Applegate sausages over here myself, to be quite honest. Okay. What's the worst thing you've ever done for your own health and vitality?
Oh, well, on the back end of your previous conversation, was probably participating in CrossFit.
Interesting.
There was some points in time in there where I wasn't physically capable. I didn't train enough, and I shouldn't have signed up for some competitions, particularly one in 2009 that I did, and I just barely made it through. And you want to combine all those things we know about athletic failure or system failure, the bonking, organ failure, post-traumatic issues, medical intervention therapy for a couple of years just to get you back up and running. That was my story. So I would say that participation. I'm still paying that price now. I'm just hoping that I'm not going to have any metabolic or cognitive issues come up down the road that just rear its ugly head because of that exposure for so long.
Yeah. And is this why because when we were talking earlier, you were mentioning, like, I think I've got 25, 30 years before I need like robotic parts. So you're just assuming like the wear and tear that you're going to need some knee replacements, shoulder stuff.
Yeah.
You don't plan on dropping dead at 77. You are more just planning.
Well, humans die from genetic predispositions, wear and tear, or the buildup of toxins. There's only three. There's three methods, right? Without, of course, acute issues. But and when I mean mechanically, like the material items, like my adrenals, right? My pancreas, my brain. These are material items that need to operate, and if they've been stressed at a point in time when physically they're at their peak of operation, I'm just being realistic. My philosophy isn't that the opposite, which a lot of people seem to think is like, oh, when you got lots of piss and vinegar between 25 to 40 years of age, just fucking go for it, and then that'll end up in you having this unbelievable life from 40 to 85. That's a fucking lie. That's a lie, actually. So you putting all your investment into all your resources from 25 to 40 actually results in you burning out a whole lot of things that it's going to take you a shit ton of medicine to help you from 45 to 80 years of age. So when I mention those things, I'm being just honest, right? Yeah. And realistic. I also know that I'm acting as I need to act as someone who's if not a role model, someone who's honest enough to talk about the truths in that. I will certainly not be the athlete that stands up at 65 and says, oh, I learned so many things, everyone should partake in that. It's like, no, I'm going to tell you the truth, right? Oh, you want 2 fake shoulders, 2 fake hips, 2 fake knees. You want to be pumping yourself with hormones that cost you $1,500 a month. You want to have medications that are basically, you're lean, but you've got medication to keep you from being insulin resistant because you kicked the shit out of your pancreas and your gut for so many years. Like, this is reality. So when I say 25, 30 years, I'm just putting dots together based upon how I'm operating now at 47 and 48 and what I can and cannot do. And I've always been pretty aware of that. So, hey, and, shoot for the stars, right? If I get 25 years or 30 years, geez, I'm going to be freaking happy with that. Yeah, I'll be happy.
I like it. Are you doing anything to like offset any of this damage? Like any supplements stuff? Yeah, you are. Anything like tell us some good hacks that you're utilizing.
Well, they're personal. So I'll leave it at that without enclosing exactly what I'm doing. But it's nothing too far from the basics, and they may be like, versions of the basics, but the basics meaning, track your poo and see what that's like as an investment, as an assessment into, an indirect analysis of your digestive health. I track my daily energy levels, my sleep and wake cycles. I track my sunlight exposure. I track my hydration levels.
How are you
and I track my
things, by the way? Is this like Aura Ring, Whoop? What are you using?
For what specifically?
For all of them. How are you tracking sleep?
I just know when I go to bed. I know when I wake up.
Got it.
Yeah. And how do I track the sunlight? Well, I just go outside and just exposed to it. And how do I track my poo? Well, I just look in the toilet. How do I track my energy? I just take a second to go, well, how's your mental acuity right now after that meal? Or how are you doing throughout the day? Again, Morgan, these basic things that don't require the complexity, right? Yeah. And there's a lot more, I would say, underneath that, but I'm hesitant to like give you what I guess people may want to hear because it's personal.
Fair
and
enough.
Also, I certainly don't want to use it as a beacon. But it should, without me even saying anything, people should hear very clearly that I am not the pinnacle of health. I shouldn't be observed as that. So don't listen to any of my quote unquote things that I'm doing personally. I'm doing that because I kicked the shit out of my system for 10 to 15 years. So, and I don't have any regrets of that expression, but I'm certainly not going to use what I do right now as a promotion of vitality.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. My last one for you, ask everyone this, but what's something—
We all know this though, Morgan. Primal Mayo is the answer. Like, I wake it all up myself. I eat it with everything. That's the answer. That's what everyone wants to hear.
Is good. That is what everyone wants to hear, myself in particular. What is something about you that most people don't know? This is my final question for you.
Gosh, I even answered that for myself on a bike ride a couple of weeks ago. And now I can't remember what I thought that answer would be. I'm very inquisitive and curious. I read a lot. I think people know that about. I read a lot. That could be
fiction or nonfiction. Fiction or nonfiction or both.
Fiction would be like stories, figuratives.
Yeah.
Figurative. So definitely more nonfiction.
Got it.
Learning. But over the past couple of years, I've got into some fiction for just the interest in stories and how stories can bring about creativity and teach lessons and et cetera. So I've been digging that.
Nice. I love it. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. This was such a great, deep conversation. I really enjoyed getting to know you. And I think our audience is going to be super excited about this chat. Let everyone know where they can find you and what you're up to one more time, and then we'll sign off. Yeah, opexfit.com. That's where you can get everything. Fabulous. We love it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Morgan. Thanks for the questions, and good luck with your continual upgrade in your potential.
Thank you. I'll need it.